6 months ago, I decided that I should take my head out of the sand, so one of my resolutions for 2026 was to give LLM coding agents a fair shot. In January, I documented my first proper assessment of Claude Code, and I was not that impressed. Of course, back then, prompt engineering experts pointed out my obvious lack of skills at making a slot machine reliable. Apparently, knowing to act as a senior developer that is never wrong before your request is considered a sign of mastery now, and you get extra points if you repeat that message again, because apparently LLMs have the attention span of my 6-year-old. But, jokes aside, the last 6 months have been intense. You know things are bad when the freaking Pope is warning us about AI in his first major teaching document. So, in this Monday morning review, we look at how the recent advancements in coding agents are changing coding in 2026 and what that means for the average developer. If you are new to this channel, welcome. I've been a software developer for more than 16 years now, and I have spent most of my time reading and writing code in languages such as TypeScript, Java, and Kotlin. As you guys know, reading and writing code was considered a very lucrative and important skill until a few months ago. These days, however, things have changed. Vibe coders and managers argue that coding in general is a waste of time and energy, while actual programmers are slowly realizing that arguing with the people hyping up LLM agents is the real waste of time and energy. So, for the past 6 months, most of us were either directly or indirectly forced to leverage LLMs in our day-to-day jobs. And, whether we like to admit it or not, Frontier, Claude, and Codex are doing a pretty good job these days, at least on the surface. I know YouTube is filled with the same recycled story of AI-generated code looking right on the surface, but what does that actually mean? Well, the quality of the AI output is pretty much the same, regardless of the topic, so instead of evaluating a few soulless code lines, we could actually test a model by asking it to write an intro for my video. I find that this exercise is much more revealing than some would expect. A YouTube intro is a bit more complex and nuanced than outputting some basic UI components, but not as difficult as generating a complex software system. Also, it helps that the Frontier models were trained on pretty much the entire stolen English literature, so writing a YouTube intro should be one of the safest possible use cases for an LLM. Here is what ChatGPT came up with. Please bear with me for the next 20 seconds. For decades, software development worked the same way. Humans translated ideas into code manually. Every feature, every function, every bug fix. But the core process never changed. A human sat at a keyboard and told the computer exactly what to do, line by line. If you wanted to build an app, you needed years of experience. Not just because coding was hard, but because modern software is ridiculously complicated. Yes, this sounds exactly like all the blog articles, LinkedIn posts, and YouTube intros you probably saw in the past year. It's 100% AI slop, and once you see the patterns, you can't unsee them. But here is the thing. That paragraph is for certain grammatically correct, and it sounds like proper English. Don't get me wrong, it is clearly an AI-generated slop that feels like plastic with no real message. In fact, my Eastern European Bond villain accent is the only thing that gives that paragraph a bit of personality. And we can all make this assessment because we all know English. But now, imagine that instead of a YouTube intro written in English, I wanted to write a full historical novel in Chinese. Of course, I don't know Chinese, I spent most of history class playing Tetris on my phone, and I have no experience writing novels. However, all these are minor inconveniences in the LLM era, so I can simply prompt Claude to do it, and in 2 minutes I get a 300-page PDF with nicely formatted paragraphs and symbols I have no idea how to read. And then I publish it on Amazon and charge people $19 for it. Now, swap the book to any kind of software product, and you can see how absurd this 10x productivity idea really is. And I'm not even talking about vibe coders, because in my opinion, people with no technical background are not to blame here. They are just reading all the paid articles and hype influencers who told them that anybody can be a software developer now. The only people to blame for this current AI psychosis and the shit show that will definitely follow in the next couple of years are the actual people already involved in building software who honestly should know better. Because one thing I've learned after using coding agents quite heavily for the past 6 months is that there is very little difference between a junior vibe coding without understanding any of the code being generated and a senior developer committing thousands of lines a day without reading any of the code being generated. And this is a huge problem. But before diving more deeply into the biggest trap of AI code generation, please let me tell you a few words about today's sponsor. PostHog is a platform built to help developers and product managers build their dream projects by helping debug their product, understand their customers, analyze usage, and ship more successful features faster. They make things really easy for you by putting all the tools and data you need in one place. This means product analytics, web analytics, session replay, error tracking, experimentation, feature flags, LLM analytics, surveys, and many more. Then, they give you an actually useful AI agent to make sense of it all. Post-Hog's data infrastructure is tailored for data engineers who need to build a robust and flexible data stack to house all their business data. And since all data lives on the same platform, you can watch what users actually did, see where they got stuck, roll out a fix behind the feature flag, test whether it worked, and then use the same data to decide what to build next. The setup is as simple as installing one of the available SDKs or pasting a snippet into your site header, which will then auto-capture data like page views, button clicks, and sessions. So if you are building a product and want analytics, replay, flags, experiments, errors, surveys, and AI-powered insights without stitching together 5 different tools, please check out Post-Hog using the link below. Back to the video. After using agents quite heavily for the past 6 months for both personal and work projects, I know for certain that this thing is like a disease that infects the entire codebase it touches. There is a saying that when you have a hammer in your hand, everything starts to look like a nail, and that is a perfect description of coding agents. In my experience, you usually start small. You let the agent make targeted changes, you review everything carefully, and you keep it under control. But soon enough, you enable the accept edits flag and find yourself checking in 200 lines of code for a feature that should have taken only 100 lines. After doing this for a few days, you slowly lose interest in reading or understanding the code you're supposedly building. Then, the issues start coming in. So you open Cloud Code again, describe the bug, and watch the agent remove and add lines like crazy. The amount of changes needed to fix what looks like a trivial bug fix feels suspicious, but the app seems to work, so you commit your code again. So you keep doing this for a couple more weeks until you reach the point where you have no idea what the implementation even looks like. You barely use your IDE anymore, and now you need to start an agent just to tweak a CSS rule, because there is no way in hell you are going to sit down and understand all the slop you have been generating for the past month. So, yes, this thing is just like a virus which spreads and infects your codebase. The code we are writing today becomes legacy the moment it lands on GitHub. And the bet everyone seems to be making is that 2 years from now, LLMs will be good enough and cheap enough that we won't have to personally maintain the pile of garbage we are generating today. And other people are starting to notice this exact problem. A couple of weeks ago, a developer building a Kubernetes terminal application wrote a blog post that hit the front page of Hacker News. What makes this interesting is that the author was actually committed to vibe coding for a few months. Then, one day, he tried to switch views inside his own app and nothing was rendered. So he was forced to finally open the project and read the code. Inside, he found a 700-line file called model.go, which was a single structure holding the Kubernetes client, the UI widgets, the log state, the describe state, the fleet view, the mouse handler, the navigation history, and roughly 30 other unrelated fields. It was all glued together by a 500-line update function with 110 switch cases. All this because he did what I described doing earlier. He didn't read the code and just kept prompting because, and I'm quoting here, each feature landed clean because the project was small enough that the AI could hold the whole thing in context. And this is the main problem with AI. It makes even the best developers lazy. If AI was as bad as it was last year, this whole thing would be easy. We would try it, laugh at the weird code, uninstall the extension, and go back to writing shitty, buggy, unmaintainable code on our own like responsible adults. But the problem is that coding agents are now good enough to be useful, fast enough to be addictive, and wrong in ways that are just subtle enough for us to ignore whenever possible, especially when the entire industry is pressuring you to output more code faster. So people complain about vibe coders and worry about junior developers in the era of AI, but I really believe that one of the professions deskilling at an incredible rate are senior software developers who are exhausted by everything that's happening around them, so they just completely zone out, grant their agent a full set of permissions, and just answer with all good on my end in their daily meeting. And before wrapping things up, here is your awesome trivia of the day, this time with a jingle. Since I mentioned the Pope addressing the state of AI, you might think that a 2000-year-old institution wouldn't have much to say about a codebase getting infected by frontier Claude models. But history repeats itself in ways that are almost scary. Just a few days ago, Pope Leo XIV released his very first major encyclical called Magnificent Humanity, and the entire 82-page manifesto is a direct, blistering critique of artificial intelligence and the tech elites running the show. What makes this a beautiful bit of history, though, is his name. He deliberately signed this document on the anniversary of an encyclical written 135 years ago by another pope named Leo. Back in 1891, Leo XIII looked out at the height of the Industrial Revolution, where factories were devaluing human labor, treating workers like disposable cogs, and creating massive concentrations of corporate wealth, and he wrote a landmark document defending the dignity of human work. Fast forward to May 2026, and Leo XIV is using the exact same framing for the AI revolution. The bottom line is that I believe the era of writing all your code by hand is gone, especially in a professional setting. However, being able to actually read and write code will be a very valuable skill in the future, but we'll have to maintain that skill in our own free time. Some will find the time and passion to do it, others will slowly forget what an IDE looks like. My plan after using coding agents for the past 6 months is to go back and really learn the C programming language. If you liked this video, you should consider joining our community, where I'm posting more dedicated weekly content. Please don't forget to smash all the buttons, and until next time, thank you for watching.